It's not how much you make, it's what you do with what you make that matters the most. Because someone could be making $1 million and someone could be making 50K, and the person making 50K could be better off financially in the long term if they're managing that money. And that might sound crazy or silly to some people right now listening, but it is true. If you manage your money properly, given your income and your lifestyle and everything else, if you can manage that money and just take smart decisions early, like it pays off in the long run. And it's never too late. I would say that too. I still have people coming to work with me in their mid 50s and they're like, I know I've left a little bit later, but like, what can we do? And there's always steps you can take. It's never too late to get started, but getting started now is really, really the key thing.
Laura Tynan, it is a pleasure to welcome you to the Inner Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this conversation today.
I'm delighted to have you. Delighted mostly because this is a first for me. I've never had a witch on the podcast. I've had so many guests. I've never had a witch, and I've never had a witch from Wall Street. So for any of our listeners who do not know who Laura Tynan is and are wondering what the hell this conversation is going to be about, you better tell them who the witch of Wall Street is, please. Maybe that's where we start.
Oh my goodness. Well, just like the wolf, you're not calling animal control when you hear that he's coming. I'm not an actual witch like Halloween around the corner.
Well, that's a relief. That's a relief.
Yeah, I'm not going to practice any hocus pocus on you today, Paul. So the Witch of Wall Street is the business that I founded several years ago. And it all came from a passion of really wanting to support women and really honing in on financial empowerment at the core of that. The evolution of that was, I can give you the best strategy in the world to manage your finances, invest your money, build wealth. But if your mindset isn't in place, like if you still have money blocks or money stories telling you you're not deserving of wealth, or that rich people don't look like you, or it's greedy to want money, or any of these different stories, you're never going to apply the strategy, or at least you won't apply it consistently. So what I've discovered is that to really create a full transformation, we need both. It's not either or, it's actually and both. So what we really look at is providing the strategy, very clear strategies, simplified strategies, but really delving deeper than under the surface. And so with that, the witch, the mindset, the inner work, the personal development piece was born alongside the more Wall Street side of financial empowerment too.
Yeah, I suppose the strategies of growing wealth are there for everybody, and yet a very tiny amount of people actually grow any degree of financial independence and wealth. I mean, you probably notice the stats better than I do, but it's minimal. It's like I don't know, is it a couple of percent of people ever achieve financial freedom? It seems to evade like 98% of the world's population.
It would seem so, but it's kind of like the gym is there for everyone to go to. But
Yeah.
how many people are actually going and like investing to get physically fit? So even though all the information can be there and it's all at our fingertips, especially now with, online and ChatGPT and everything, like we can ask the questions and find the answers. But again, if our inner story or inner narrative is saying it's not for you, it's not for people that look like you or for your background, or, all the different excuses that come up to the surface, many of which we haven't even intentionally chosen, they've just been inherited, then we never will take action. So we'll never go to the gym, we'll never go to the financial gym, we won't open up the book and actually go, okay, what's this whole financial independence thing? Is it available for me? And if it is, like, how do I make it happen? So it can all be there and still we don't move forward.
Yeah, I was sitting in a training course in Austin, Texas about a decade ago, maybe. And there's about 60 or 70, mostly entrepreneurs in the room, and a speaker on stage. And he said something that struck me. He said, I noticed that, he said, sometimes he said, I'm heading to the airport very early in the morning, like 5 a.m. or something. I'm driving to the airport and I see all these people out running and exercising. He said, did you ever notice that the people you see out exercising at 5 a.m. are the people who don't need to? You look at him, you go, guy doesn't need any more exercise, like he's just in amazing shape. And I thought that was a really interesting point. The people doing it are the people who don't need to. And when he said it, mentor of Michael Keith Cunningham, I refer to him often in the podcast, but when he said it, I looked around the room at these 70 people, men and women in the room, 4 days with him, full on listening to all the financial and business wisdom he had. And as I got to know some of these people, what became evident to me is a lot of the people didn't need to be in the room,
Mm.
if you know what I mean. Like, they were the people who are already successful. So it's bizarre that the people that are attracted to learn about wealth and finance are often the people who really don't need the education.
Yeah, and it's both. I think you're absolutely right when you go to these seminars, and I've been to many around the world myself, and it's the people in there already like operating and performing and succeeding at a level that would be mind blowing for many,
Mm,
that are there to learn more
mm,
because they are already have had that experience of success and they know there's more that they're capable of, and they're just looking for that little fine tuning moment or that little insight or that little saying or something that's going to click that can take them to the next level. And that is something that in my business I am trying to overcome. And a lot of the women that come to work with me and a lot of people that men and women who consume my content and are engaged in the community, they are people who actually really need it, which is wonderful that we're
mm.
shifting that narrative of building wealth and investing and personal finance management and all of the other things, that it's only for the prestigious few or people who've come from the background of wealth or whose family passed it on to them or they were privileged in different ways. That actually now it is becoming a bit more mainstream, thankfully, with platforms like YouTube and social media, and we're able to reach a bigger audience where people actually really need it. Still completely scratching the surface, like not even anywhere near to my own personal ambition or mission for the impact I want to make through the business and the numbers that I want to reach and be able to deliver this information to. But it is really encouraging that, I get to have conversations with people who are like, I never thought investing was for me. I had no idea about money, and like changing their mindset and giving them the opportunity to say, oh, actually, this is for me too. Like building wealth, building a sense of financial independence is now available for me. So that's really exciting.
So, two questions, maybe completely different questions. I'm wondering where the source. Well, I'm wondering two things, but they're completely separate questions. But I'm wondering them, so we'll do. I'll say them because otherwise, forgetting. I'm wondering how you came to this in the first place, and the second thing I'm wondering is when people come to you, where do you find most of them starting? I mean, what's the switch most of them need to turn on? Maybe you'd answer that question first, and then we'll get back to your own journey. So, someone walks in and
Sure.
they're first, and their client is their first time with you. Where do you most commonly? What's the first shift you need to help them make to get them on the road?
Yeah, I mean, so the first shift has happened before they even, get an email from them or before we've even been connected
Mm,
at a live workshop or anything. Because and it's actually been really interesting. I have two YouTube channels. One is really finance based, and one is all about mindset.
mm,
And it's the majority of people are coming through the mindset because it seems like there's almost like a lower barrier to entry. There's less resistance, and we're working on shifting a belief first.
mm.
And so that tends to be the entry point. So before they've even come, they've actually sparked something in their brain of like, oh, maybe this is for me. Like I can kind of relate to this woman. She didn't come from a particular background. She's talking in a language that I kind of, resonate with. So let me find out what else is available. So that tends to be kind of first what happens. But the first thing I focus on before really delving into mindset and anything else is personal finances, which is all about securing your base, right? So before I ever talk to you about investing and building wealth, we got to make sure that your finances are in place because otherwise you're building on a shaky foundation. That structure does not last.
So does that mean getting a very basic understanding of where they are financially? And do you find that a lot of people just don't even haven't even examined their own finance to see where they're at?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the ostrich effect, it's the term used in personal finance because most people literally go around with their head buried in the sand.
Mm,
And I'm never blaming anyone. I'm not here to shame anyone
mm,
because I was there too, right? So I know what it's like when this isn't a normal part of your life or conversations or people aren't having these discussions around you. It's really easy, especially growing up in a culture or society where money is taboo, to just avoid looking at your bank account, to just kind of say, well, money comes in and I think X goes out, it kind of all balances out and just kind of hope things take care of themselves. So I get why that happens, but it really is coming back to basics. So it's taking people through like, okay, how much are you really making? Especially for any business owners who might have multiple sources of income coming in, like how much are you actually making? What's actually going out? And there's always money leakages. You always find at least an extra couple of £100 where money is just flying out and they don't even know why. They don't know where it's going. It's just stuff they don't need or don't want, or it's an unused subscription. It's like, all right, let's close those money leakages first and then start looking at what's your savings situation. And I speak with people in their 40s and 50s and they're like, I have no savings. It just hasn't been part of my conversation. It hasn't been part of my upbringing. I've been busy getting a mortgage and working on my career and raising a family and trying to, have a certain standard of living. It just hasn't been at the forefront of their conversations or mind. And so we're like, okay, well, let's figure this piece out, because before we invest, we need to really hone in on that. What about credit card debt? Right? I've had conversations with people who are like, I got a credit card and it's a 0% interest. And so they're flying through it and they're building up expenses and they think that's fantastic. And I'm like, you still need to pay this off.
Back, exactly.
Great to have it at zero interest, but this is still an expense that you need to like cover, and that won't last forever. So do you have a plan in place? And so I think the most confronting piece and the most empowering piece really is actually just sitting down and going, okay, what's actually going on? And so we use this net worth planner that I've built, and it's very simple, right? I've gone through my finance years, but like we keep it really, really simple. It's all laid out on one page. What's coming in, what's going out, where have you saved, where's your debt, what's going on, and what can we do to actually start building wealth from here? So it's always going back to basics. And it's like everything. It's just like almost putting in place the simple things first. And I think when it comes to finance, especially, we think it has to be really complicated, and the financial industry has its own language that it loves to make things really complex. Because if I can convince you that you can't do it yourself, then you're happy to pay financial advisors like massive amounts of money so they'll figure it out for you. But it's not. Come back to the simple principles and, take back your own power, get in control of your finances. It changes not just your relationship with money, but literally every single aspect of your life. I've had marriages saved from going through this process with people where, like, financial stress is number 2 reason for divorce. So if you care about your relationship, care about your marriage, like, get your finances in order, get on the same page together. So my experience is that, yeah, we're talking about money and we're talking about numbers, but it's so much bigger. It's so much more beyond that. It's freedom, it's sense of peace of mind. I can sleep well at night. I know my kids are taken care of. My marriage is going good. My relationship's good because we're on the same page. We're working as a team together. All that stuff that we've shoved under the carpet has now come to the surface. And we're addressing it together. So long story short, personal finances, managing the basics first will be step 1.
Well, I love the fact that you're demystifying finance and starting in that place, because if you don't get an understanding of where you stand financially, I imagine that the underlying reason people don't do that is because of fear. So they don't want to look at their finances because they're afraid of what they might find out. And so they're not addressing that fear. They're not addressing, and this is the mindset of peace. They're not addressing the thoughts that are beneath so they're ignoring it. And I would imagine it's very liberating when someone actually sits down, and even if they find something they don't like, you go, but okay, but now you know, and now let's create a plan. And there must be that great sense of ownership and autonomy. Go, okay, now I'm beginning to take responsibility. That's the empowerment phase, isn't it? I'm beginning to take ownership. I can create something out of this.
Like, you hit the nail on the head. It absolutely is. The majority of people say, I am afraid to look at it as to what I'll find. The reality is it still exists. So
Exactly.
we can overcome that fear and we can look at it. Then we can put in place a plan. And, like, yes, the words of, having sovereignty over money, having a sense of control, empowerment, like, before anything's even changed, before we've even said, okay, here's your strategy to build wealth, and let's do all the nervous system, like, before anything else, just actually looking at it and saying, okay, well, now I know where I am. Like, what's my starting point? Like, that piece alone creates such a shift. And now there's momentum, and now we can see, okay, now I know where I am. Where do I want to get to?
I'm guessing I'm at least a couple of decades older than you, if not more. And what what I see, maybe you haven't, we certainly haven't experienced yet, but you haven't witnessed yet. I see a lot of people in their, say, probably about your mid 50s onwards, maybe, that you begin to realize the end is nigh. Whether you have a business, or whether you have, just a job or whatever, pension, and you realize that the time frame, your earning time frame, is probably limited now. And I've seen a lot of people who begin to realize, I don't have enough. And in many cases, they just haven't planned for it. Now, I have spoken to people literally in their late 50s who haven't sat down and looked at their finances. And I'm saying to them, are you
Yeah.
planning, when are you planning on retiring? Are you planning on retiring at 65? And you haven't given any consideration to how you're going to fund that. And my concern is that we will end up like when you go to the US and you walk into Walmart and you're being served by someone who's, 75 years of age, because they simply haven't got the finance.
Yeah.
And the really sad thing about that is that had they started when they were in their mid 20s or 30 or something, they could have, even if they had a basic job all their life, they could have transformed that entirely. It's something I'm hugely passionate about.
It is. I have the same observation when I see people who in their much elder years and they're working in stores. And I think, I hope this is because you actually want to be out and
Yeah.
socializing. But the reality is it's probably for financial reasons. Um, and it is really heartbreaking because you're right. You don't need to be making an extraordinary salary. You don't need to make a lot of money. And I always say this, it's not how much you make, it's what you do with what you make that matters the most, because someone could be making $1 million and someone could be making 50K, and the person making 50K could be better off financially in the long term if they're managing that money. And that might sound crazy or silly to some people right now listening, but it is true. If you manage your money properly, given your income and your lifestyle and everything else, if you can manage that money and just take smart decisions early, like, it pays off in the long run. And it's never too late. I would say that too. I still have people coming to work with me in their mid 50s and they're like, I know I've left a little bit later, but what can we do? And there's always steps you can take. It's never too late to get started, but getting started now is really, really the key thing.
While we're on the topic of young people, I've had this debate recently of Ramit Zethi. Is that what's the guy's name? Is that
Yeah, yeah.
the financial
I'm sure
advisor?
you have to be rich. I will make you rich if
Yeah,
you do.
whatever it is. And he says a lot of really, really good stuff. And I've had a debate with people over his opinion on buying or renting a home. And
Yeah.
and I suppose I'm in the view of one should own a home. I'm open to have it debated, but it's from the perspective that, because I'm close on 60 years of age, I'm going, well, the wonderful position I'm in is that I own my homes. So, like, yeah, even if my income disappeared, I can live in a very nice home. I can holiday in a very nice home because I own them. But I think if you're going to get old, so when people talk about not owning a home, I kind of go, but you will reach a point in your life, unless you've properly invested and you have, I hate the word passive income, but you have income coming in from investments. You will reach a point you won't work anymore, and how do you provide? So when you're speaking with younger people, do you have a particular angle you take on that as to whether or not a property is something they should own, or how do you view that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation, and it's the same in Rich Dad Poor Dad. He talks about it as well, of like, your home is not an asset; it is a liability, and we have to be really clear on it. And like, there's so many different financial experts will say, buying a house, it's not a financial decision; that is like more of a lifestyle
Yeah.
decision. But it comes down to, if you're renting and you're not doing anything with building wealth or passive income
Mm.
through investing, then that's probably not a great position to
Yeah.
be in if you're thinking of just renting for the rest of your life, because you will reach a point that you don't want to work anymore. There's no income coming in. And then what? Like, are you just reliant on maybe some savings you have, or what's going to happen then? So if it's that alternative, then, looking to get on the property ladder, of course, fantastic if you're not expecting to have any income in the future. The path that I'm going down, and I see a lot more people going down too, is choosing the alternative of investing. Just say, I can put my money to work for me. I know that will build to a certain level of wealth. And again, this varies across countries,
Mm.
but it will build to a certain level of wealth. And at some point, I can start withdrawing from that, and that will cover me for an income in
Yeah.
my later years. But that's the piece that we need to make sure is in part of the
Yeah.
equation. It's not just, do I rent or buy? And also, buying a home these days, there's a massive hurdle. I speak with a lot of women who cannot get on the property ladder,
Absolutely.
especially if they're single women, even if they're working in reputable companies, good jobs, good income. They're like, I can't afford to buy a home in Ireland right now. And so they're really struggling with that piece. Whereas investing, it can be accessible. Do you have €100? You can start investing today. Now, the challenge in Ireland is that retail investing, so investing for the regular person, the individual like you and I, it's not very favorable. The government hasn't set it up to be amazingly incentivizing, versus if we look at the UK, the US, you have a lot more preferable structures to invest through. But even in that, saying that, it's still better than nothing. You're still making your money work for you, and it's a whole lot better than letting your money sit in a regular
Mm.
bank account. Like, just having your money sitting in AIB or Bank of Ireland, and these days, if it's just in a regular account, like, people don't understand, like, inflation, like, it's eating away at your money. Like,
Mm.
it's the 10K today is not worth 10K in 5 years. So it really comes down to, well, what is my current circumstances? If I can't get on a property ladder, well, what is my alternative? And investing is a path that is really readily accessible for the majority of people. Even for those who think it's totally out of their realm, it isn't, especially with fractional investing and things, like, you can invest with really small amounts of money, um, and it's a lot less risky in a sense than leaving your money sit in a regular account where inflation is going to eat away at it. At least investing is giving your money a fighting chance to grow, and you can protect it. So that's my viewpoint on it.
But I think also if you can get that message to people young enough, and then they have decades, because if you've 30 if you've 3 decades, if you've 30 years before you reach that point of retirement or whatever, like,
Yeah.
a small amount of money can grow to a massive amount of money. So if you're sensible enough to take that approach, I would say you're certainly going to find yourself in front. I mean, I have 3 adult sons, and it's something since the time they were kids I have been adamant about getting them to start investing, and thankfully I think they've grasped it, to get them to
Yeah.
understand the magic you have now, and they're in their 20s and 30s
Mm.
now, but the magic you have now to get started in this now, because then to some degree, I don't care what you do for a living, go and do whatever your passion pursues, and hope you'll make money, maybe you won't, I don't know, but via that investing you're creating this financial independence. But the interesting thing, as my kids were younger, and I'd be speaking to other, parents, they would look at me like they had no comprehension of what I was talking about, because they just didn't understand it. It means that if they don't understand it, they're not passing it on to their children, because they've no comprehension of it.
No, absolutely. And it's, I have so many parents now coming to work with me, and one of the motivations that they cite when we're discussing, like, why do you want to join one of our communities or
Mm.
programs, and, like, why do you want to start learning this? And they say, I want to be able to not just do this for me, but do this for my kids, and, like, teach them. And it's like, if you don't know and you're not empowered yourself, how are you supposed to pass this down?
Mm.
And it's something, as I have a young stepson, I have a baby on the way.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
I
So you're well thinking of the future.
very much, and I already have these conversations, these little fake or hypothetical conversations in my head of, like, what will I be teaching her about it? But it's such a different, like, it's just gonna be such a different experience than when I grew up. And when we're talking about money in these conversations too, it's not just currency, and it's not just whatever. We're talking about money in its own sense. It's an energy. Like, we can rewrite lineages, we can break generational patterns of maybe lack or scarcity, and we can write new narratives and stories for our next generation, for passing down the lineage, which is so exciting. Because yes, it's for me, and it's for when I get older, and to make sure that I'm not a financial burden on my kids, which you see a lot of happening. Adults and parents who are getting older now, they don't have any financial cushion in place, and the burden is passed on to their kids of, like, how do we take care of mom and dad? Right? I never want that situation, but I also want to ensure that my kids grow up and they never have to make decisions out of, well, I need this paycheck, I have to stay here because of the money, or I'm in some weird power dynamic over money in a relationship. That they always have their own money, and they have that sense of a healthy relationship with what money is, to understand that, it's not the love of money that's the root of all evil. It's the
Mm.
love of money above all else that is the root of all evil, right? So put money in its place, understand that it's your employee, it's there to serve you and support you, but have a healthy relationship with it. And, that starts from a very young age. Like by the time we're 7, our beliefs, for the most part, are kind of set in stone. And then we have to go on the process as adults of like all the deconditioning and the rewiring and all that fun journey. But if we can get them as kids, it's just like, they're a sponge. Like give them a healthy relationship with money from when they're young, and it's completely transformed things.
So I guess we both grew up in Ireland, and I grew up. I was born in the '60s, so. But my experience of life in the '70s and '80s, certainly in Ireland, was it. Ireland was a very, very different country. I mean, it's a very prosperous, very prosperous country now, but it wasn't back then. There was poverty is the wrong word, but there was a lot of scarcity is a much better word, and people lived in scarcity. My parents were relatively prosperous, but had scarcity mindsets. In other words, that if that makes sense, I mean, we lived
Yeah.
relatively in a prosperous way, but their mindsets were that of lack, I suppose. But that's what we were surrounded by, and maybe it was the same experience for you, but I had to make a very concerted effort by immersing myself into a lot of positive psychology, whatever you want to call it. But I had to go, okay, there's this and there's this. This is what my society is telling me about scarcity, about lack, about poverty, all about hard work, all of these things. And there's this whole set of teachings or life experience here, and
Mm-hmm.
which is that I want. And for me, it was a choice of, well, I'm going to immerse myself in this education. And very much like yourself, there's two sides to that. There's the practical, I need to know how this stuff works, but I need the mindset as well and the soul set,
Mm-hmm.
because that's hugely important. If I don't get both right, I had to immerse myself in that and then drag myself out of that. But but around you, when you certainly when I was doing that, people thought I was strange. People thought, what are you up to? It's because laughing, I can see, was probably the same for you. But
Yeah.
what I found is, then there comes a time, and maybe that takes many years or even decades. There comes a time when they stop laughing, because your life has
Yeah.
become entirely different to theirs. But then they've usually a story about why you were lucky. So it's so I
Um,
does that resonate? The decades
so
haven't
much
changed
so.
that story, huh?
um, Massively so. I mean, I'm pretty much sure that people probably were calling me a witch long before I actually just owned that title,
Yeah, yeah.
because I grew up in the '80s, so a little bit later, but um, I followed a path where I thought money would lead me. We grew up in a very good family. Like I never struggled or wondered where my next meal was going to come. But I certainly didn't grow up in a household where money was discussed or investing was ever even like investing was laughable.
Hmm.
Like it was literally like a laughable topic. Like, oh yeah, as if. So it didn't come from those conversations or that upbringing, but a family that believed in me and loved me, which was the foundation for everything else. That gave me the courage to then go and find out solutions for myself. But so I was like, well, I want to make money. Like if I'd seen my mom didn't really have money, she always had to ask my dad for it. I thought I don't want to be in that situation when I'm older. So let me get educated. Like mom left school when she was 16, my dad when he was 17. Like they didn't really have the opportunities and the privilege that I did, that they gave me as I grew up. So I got educated and I thought, well, where's the money? It's in finance. It has to be, right? Like I had no idea. Um, but studied finance and then became a chartered accountant and was working in this big four firm, but my bank account was not reflecting that. I was
Hmm.
like, how am I this educated and with these many good grades? And I did what I was told to do, but
Yeah.
where I'm still struggling every month. Like, what is going on? Something's not clicking. And that is when I turned to really delving into the personal development space. And I took some big bets on myself and invested a lot of money that I didn't have to travel across the world and learn from some of the best teachers in the science around getting rich, like the mindset, the energy, the manifestation side of things. And definitely people thought I was crazy. Like, I mean, to the point that I remember a HR director calling me in when I told my firm I was leaving and thought I was having some quarter life crisis and was like, you don't have another job lined up. You're obviously, there's something wrong with you. And I said, no, I'd immersed myself in these teachings of an amazing man over in Toronto and just learned that life could be different. And I knew it started internally. And I had shifted my mindset so much that I was very confident to leave and I knew something better was awaiting me. And it did within a matter of weeks. Moved to London, got the most incredible job, was living out the dream of 18-year-old me when I first walked through the gates of UCC, to study finance, and my whole life changed, like completely transformed. And yes, the financial aspects changed, but I was becoming a different person. And it was absolutely that case before all that happened, people thought I was insane. You're leaving a good job. You're flying across the country to learn from some wizard man. Like, what are you doing? Laura's literally lost her mind. Like, we're just going to write her off. And then you start posting about that on social media and you get all sorts of looks. But I stuck with it. I made sure that I was surrounding myself in communities that also kind of thought like me. And so I wasn't a complete alien. And eventually things began to show up. Right? So the inner world is reflected in your outer world. So my outer world began to then adapt to what had shifted internally. And as I said, like the money changed, the opportunities, like I was living this really incredible life that I had, and I say manifested or created intentionally through vision, through shifting my mindset. And then I think people started to laugh a little bit less. And now we've kind of come full circle where I'm really passionate about teaching what I did, to help others to make the same shift for themselves, those who are willing and wanting.
So I'm guessing the amazing man you met was Bob Proctor.
Indeed, yes. Incredible mentor.
Yeah. So I've never met Bob Proctor, but certainly he's around. He's around longer than I am, and that's saying something. He's around a very, very long. He's around a very, very long time, and he's still teaching. So, um, what was the nature of the study you did with him, and what was what was the essence of what you took away that really fired you to begin to make changes?
I mean, there was so much to that whole process. The first was like even in like I remember Paul even calling up the sales guy to book in to go to his event because it was like an application thing online. You couldn't just buy the ticket. But even that step in itself was like, right, the transformations in the transaction, right? Putting money down, saying, okay, I'm going to go do this was such a big shift. I had never invested in myself to that point. And at the
Well,
time
it's
it was
belief in yourself.
15,000 expressing through action belief in myself and belief in what was possible and knowing that there was more available than what I was currently living. And knowing that the journey that I had been taught was for success of, get a good education, good job, and that will solve everything, that wasn't actually working anymore. Like that, whatever, if that worked in the past, maybe, but it certainly wasn't working. And so flying to Toronto and working with Bob and being in a really intimate group with other people. I was the youngest there, 24. All these really successful business people and hearing how they were talking. So the networking piece, like just being in that environment was incredible. But the biggest takeaway from all of his teachings, and we were there for over 10 days and I interviewed him and went to his home and saw his recording studio and like met with his family. It was so incredible. But the biggest thing was definitely you have control over your own life and that your thoughts are literally creating your reality. And you can't point to external circumstances anymore and blame them. Like, sure, you can if you want. But if you want to get out of victim mentality and actually get in the driving seat of your life and get to the destination you want, you can do it. And for someone, with my background, and I was like, oh my God, like, I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm willing to believe in this because he's doing something right. And the people around him are, they have the examples that this works. So why not give this a go? What is the worst that can happen? So I came back again. People thought I was even more crazy because I was reading my book, like The Science of Getting Rich and As a Man Thinketh and Think and Grow Rich and all these different things, just totally immersing myself, and at the start, nothing changed. Like it doesn't happen overnight. Like nothing on the outside had changed yet. But that sense of I can create my own reality, burn the bridges, no plan B, go all in with conviction, faith, turn up and take action. That is manifestation in action. Like you are showing the universe or God or whatever you resonate with, you are showing them your faith by turning up and believing and not having a plan B as such. And so that belief gave me the conviction to make bold moves, like leaving my job, and I was in my 20s, so I guess it's different versus if you have a family and a mortgage to pay. But leaving my job, deciding to say yes to an opportunity to move to London and just going all in, um, because I knew I can create my own reality. And that transformed everything for me.
So you say other people thought you were mad, and I get all that, but I'm sure there were also moments after you'd taken that leap that you looked in the mirror and said, "Laura, what the hell?" There must have been dark moments when you thought, "What have I done?" How do you
Yeah, I
how do you
mean,
handle those moments?
there's plenty of times where you doubt yourself, and look, even in building a business, it's not a straight line to success by any means. Um, your level of self belief has to be verging on delusional at
Mm,
times, to be
yeah.
quite honest, to really keep going. Because how much easier it would have been for me, I'm in business now over 5 years, how much easier it would have been for me to just go back and work in private equity and make a ton of money
Mm.
and have all this pressure of, building something from scratch off my shoulders. Like that is such a temptation for the majority. But for me, I just had this unshakable belief in myself. And maybe it was instilled from my mom, who always said, you can go and do anything you want to be in the world, like go for it. Um, but I just believed that my vision would come true. And I didn't know when or how, but studying manifestation. And I think manifestation is almost the wrong word these days because it's thrown around in a very like woo woo, but like in a negative connotation, but like studying how are things created, like scientifically, what's going on, like how is energy turning into real form, like into matter, like what are we doing? How is it that your mind creates your own reality? And I've always come back to the science of it because as someone who is quite logical, like I need to know why you're telling me to visualize, like why am I meditating? Why am I doing my gratitude journal? Because like otherwise can I be doing something else? Um, but just always coming back to it is inevitable if you're doing these things, and you have to give up control over the timing, and that is where most people won't keep going because they have a timeline on it, or they start to doubt themselves, or they don't see immediate success, or people around them start to mock them, or get critical or whatever, and so they begin to retreat away from their dreams.
When you're talking about persistence there, and I think anyone who's had any degree of success will tell you that persistence is fundamental. But you also talked about the science behind this. So maybe you'd talk a little bit about that. Where is the science behind? I mean, I also don't like the word manifestation, and it's not. By the way, I'm big into visualization. I'm big into meditation. All of these things. The thing I don't like about the word manifestation is it suggests that that is enough. That visualization, meditation, it's all enough. And in my life experience, and the many successful people I know, it's not enough. It requires action as well. So that's the only reason I don't like the word. Apart from that, it's all good with me. So you talk about the science behind this. What do you understand to be the science behind this manifestation for once, or intent? What's the other word used was in intentionally creation? Was that what you said? Which
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I'm so glad you touched on that because you know if you talk about even like Bob Proctor, he got really well known, I suppose, mainstream from The Secret, which was
Mm.
all about the law of attraction. And I think people kind of misunderstood that you could just sit on your couch and visualize, and then like the elephant would drop into the room, and it's not that at all. Like all of those practices, like your gratitude, aligning your energy, having that clear visualization, like the clear vision, like it's not just people who are into this stuff do it, like famous athletes and the best of the best, like all of these practices are about giving your mind direction, focusing your thoughts, having clarity over what your next moves are going to be, like aligning your energy, making sure there's no beliefs that are standing in their way, saying, yeah, Paul, there's no point you even taking the next step forward
Yeah.
because you can't succeed anyway, right? So you have like all of those practices are giving you that belief and that conviction to say, I can go forward. And then you got to go forward. You got to take action, right? Inspired action. Okay. And so what happens is that instead of just working and like working for the sake of it and like hustling and trying to work really crazy hours, which I've done and it's not really got me that far, it moves you, but it doesn't move the needle in a big way. What we can do when we use these practices is we can accelerate things, because now instead of just turning up to work every day, and I was using this in my corporate life and in my life as a business owner, right? So it works no matter where you are. But instead of just turning up to work and going through the mundane and sending out emails and doing whatever it is, you're now turning up having taken time to really focus on your vision. What is it I want to do? Which gives you priorities, right? What is my actual priorities? It gives you clarity of your goals. And then it ensures when you turn up to take action, you can align your energy with the action you're taking. So I know with much more clarity what I'm going to say yes to, what I'm going to say no to. I know what to prioritize now because I know what's on my vision. Like I have my goals sitting here in front of me. It's something I've learned from Bob Proctor. Have a goal card. I've had this for the last 10 years or so, and this is like these are like the guardrails for life. Like I now know how to lead my life. So it's not that visualization in itself is going to just produce the results, but it can be quite magical in the sense of when you're focused on things and you're putting that intention out there, opportunities can come your way. But it still requires you to be prepared. It still requires you to turn up. Like, for example, we wouldn't have connected if I was always just sitting on my couch saying, oh, I'd love to be on more podcasts.
Yeah.
Right? You need to turn up and like put content out there and talk about things and, create your own network and create those opportunities. But that's all come from a vision of what I'm building. And so when you get into the science and the intentional creation, it's, Joe Dispenza does a great job, a much better job than I will do at explaining more from like a quantum physics point of view, at really understanding like from like the basic electron level, like what's happening to energy and how, energy just is, and it's our focus or it's our intention on it causes it to turn into form into matter. So, waking up every day and instead of just reliving the same day in and out, to actually say anything is possible today. Because from a quantum physics point of view, and please no scientists catch me up on this one, but from a quantum physics point of view, my understanding is that yes, everything is possible because everything is in constant possibility until we put a focus or attention on it. And so our ability to create is actually infinite. It is the conditioning in our mind and the stories that we have bought into that are running on repeat every single day because we are thinking the same thoughts every day that is actually shaping our reality to produce the same results time and time again. And then we look at our external environment and go, shit doesn't work. Just look at it, nothing's changed. It's like, yeah, but nothing's changed in here. So here has to come first and then on the outside too.
Yeah, I think you're right. Nothing changes in our reality until we change. And I always think that we have, without getting woo-woo, the reality is that nothing happens without energy. As you say, if you sat on your couch and never created any content, you now would be blaming Bob Proctor for taking your money and go, it didn't manifest. But and the other thing is, you said you've been at this for 5 years. So the reality is, if you want to get into this sort of world of content creation, you have to be willing to persist. And most people aren't. Most people go, well, I'm going to get on YouTube and I will do it for 3 months. And if I'm not a multimillionaire, there's something wrong. So there, and what's interesting to me, because I was studying Bob Proctor probably 30 years ago. But what's interesting to me is when I look at both worlds, because I also mix with a lot of entrepreneurs who maybe would not speak this language or would not have an interest in it. But when you pull behind the curtains of what they've done to create their business and create their wealth, this is exactly what they've done. In other words, they have become, many of them that I know, they've become, I'm going to say, at a relatively young age, they've become hugely focused. And yes, I know I could take the job, but I want to do this. They've become hugely focused, maniacally focused. Sometimes they've worked extraordinarily hard at it. They've had setbacks, but they've had the level of belief in their vision. They wouldn't have used the word vision, but they've level of belief in what they're doing and in themselves, that they just kept going and they just kept going. And funnily enough, they turn around 20, 30 years later and they're this enormously successful person. They would never use any of the language we use, but it's the mechanics of success, no matter where
Yes.
what you're with. They have focused their energy on something, and that is the outcome they've created in their life. It hasn't been a straight road, but that's the outcome they've created.
I know that people will say, oh, they just got lucky,
Yeah.
but it's not the case. And it's so true. When I worked in corporate finance, there was a while that I was working in financial restructuring, and I was in the board of a company out in the Middle East. And the chairman was this fantastic, flamboyant French man, he was a much older man. And listening to him and his story, he would never use the word manifestation or visualization or any of these terms, but that it was 100% what he did. Since he was very, very young, he had this unshakable belief in himself. He said yes to opportunities. He knew where he wanted to go. So he had this direction in life and was turning up with the belief that this is already happening for me. Like there was this just strong conviction that he could do it. And so some people won't use the practices like gratitude or belief work because maybe it's already there and they're working on it. And maybe if they did use these practices, it could accelerate things faster for
That's
them,
true.
and they could move through a lot of blocks and maybe they wouldn't have challenges or having to um, have things maybe struggle so much in other areas of their life. But when it comes to business, certainly they are 100% using these skills, maybe just unknowingly. So I've seen this time and time again as well. It doesn't matter what, nationality or level of wealth, and just this focus. And this is really, when we talk about manifestation or intentional creation or any of these things, personal development, this is it. It's like removing any of the blocks and turning that are stopping you from moving forward towards what you want.
Well, the interesting thing is, it's just come to now, because I know a couple of people who are millionaires and successful business owners, but who don't feel like they are. In other words, if you look at the value of their business or their net worth or whatever, you go, yeah, you're a millionaire, but they don't really feel like that's what they are. That's not their life experience, and it can take, and they have a very hard time accepting the fact, oh, I actually am successful. And I think that's because they have done all this work, and that work has allowed them to force this into their lives, but they haven't actually addressed some of those very early feelings of, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve this. So they have managed to achieve the goal in spite of that, but those beliefs are still lingering, and so they don't really enjoy the wealth they have. And I've witnessed with some of them, as they slowly begin to recognize that, and they go, hey, maybe it's time that I recognize that I'm successful, and go, it's okay, even though my family aren't, maybe my friends aren't, and go, it's okay. I deserve this and I get to enjoy this. My family get to enjoy this. But I wonder if they had addressed some of the mindset issues 20 years earlier, if they could have enjoyed the journey a hell of a lot more and um, enjoyed the fruits of their labors a lot more.
100%. And that's the other aspect of personal development that's such the gift of it. It's, not just being rich in your bank account and all that, but it's actually feeling internally rich as well,
Mm.
and removing those things that are telling you you're not worthy or you're not deserving. And, I work with women, and just recently had a conversation with one woman. She had, you know, close to 500,000 invested. So doing incredibly well for herself. She was still quite young, living in the US, had a great career for herself, but she was still struggling on whether or not she should hire a cleaner to come in and take over some cleaning duties during the week. And I said, well, looking at your finances, you were more than
You could
in a
probably
position
afford it.
to
Yeah.
you could probably afford a living cleaner if you wanted. But she still had this mentality of lack and scarcity because that's what she got brought up with. And that was actually for her a driving factor to be so financially successful. So it served her in one capacity, but it wasn't serving her in another capacity because she was constantly stressed about money and, can I afford to do this? And so she wasn't even able to enjoy the kind of fruits of her labor. So, even with the most successful people, it's like you have the science of success, but then there's the art of fulfillment, right? And we don't want to reach
Yes.
the
Yeah.
top of Mount Everest and then look around and be like, well, how did I even get here? We might as well have been dropped off by a helicopter and not enjoy the journey. And I remember I actually did climb Mount Kilimanjaro, not
Okay.
Everest. And when we got to the top, it was like overcast, foggy, you couldn't see anything. And I remember just like really having this moment and going, well, thank God I enjoyed the journey up here. And I took in the sights because there's nothing, like I don't feel any sense of euphoria. I haven't reached the summit. I can't see anything. And I took that back into my own life of like, God, when they say enjoy the journey to the goal or where you want to get, like that is the richness of your life. Like don't arrive at the final destination and think back and go, did I take time to enjoy any of the milestones along the way? Or did I take time to really appreciate myself, appreciate those around me, to soak up the richness of life outside of the financial success as well? So unfortunately, it's a bit of a learning lesson that can come from many people too late, and they have to look back and a little bit of reflection to hopefully not repeat it. But personal development, the inner work as such, gives you that gift of introspection too, that you can hopefully enjoy that journey. Because we only get one life anyway, so what are we doing if we're all racing to the end?
And when you speak to some very successful people and they reflect over their lives, often they look back to the struggle. They look back to that time. They go to their wife and go, "Do you remember when we were in the one bed apartment?" And you know what I mean. They will look back. Now maybe they wouldn't look back fondly if they were still there,
We're still
but they
there.
do. But they do look back. They do look back fondly. Um, I have probably since, I'm going to say over 40 years, but probably since my late teens, I have been in this world of both learning investment, business, and personal development. In that time, I have come across, and maybe you have as well, an enormous amount of bullshitters, um, an enormous amount, and I think in the world today, certainly podcast, YouTube, it's so easy to go online. There is a huge amount of bullshitters. My assessment, Laura, is you're not among those. No offense. What appealed to me about what you're doing is um, is that you're very grounded in both sides. In other words, you're very grounded in the practicality. You're not just teaching people the woo woo, for want of a better word, but you're teaching people the mindset, because that is essential. And I can say from experience, knowing wealthy people who haven't addressed that, you won't enjoy it unless you'll struggle harder to get there if unless you address that inner work of self-worth, and you won't enjoy it when you get there. And I mean, I have friends I can pick up the phone to who are in that state. So that is
Yeah.
that is an absolute fact. And so I love that you're teaching people the practical tools of sitting down, examining their finance, and giving, because people need that as well. They don't just need manifestation. They need to get that. Oh, so maybe I can create something. Okay, where do I start? And if they don't have the language and nobody's guiding them, so I think that's a wonderful combination. So congratulations on that. Where can people find you, and I mean, where do people tap in, and what's the type of work you'll do with people? How do people work with you?
Well, thank you for that reflection back too. And I do always find it a little
I
bit
apologize for my
interesting.
honesty.
No, I love it. But it's interesting when you see people, teaching money manifestation, they can't rub two nickels together or tell you what's happening with their
I'm
finances.
going to say
And like,
95% of them fall into that category. That's my experience.
but you're absolutely right. Anyone can start a podcast or YouTube
Mm,
channel these days and speak with great conviction.
mm,
So it's important as well for viewers or anyone, like, do your due diligence,
mm,
and really tune in to like, and what I'm being sold, does it actually make sense? Like, is it grounded in something, or is it just someone speaking well?
mm.
And you kind of get caught up in that buzz. But thank you. Yes, I think the blend of Witch and Wall Street works really well, clearly. So if you want to connect, lauratynan.com, my website is probably the best place to start. And from there, I have my YouTube channels linked. We have a finance YouTube channel for my finance people who want to get started. There's also the mindset channel, which it tends to be, an easier entry for most people to kind of start thinking about money in a different way. And then in terms of working together, I have an incredible community called The Collective, which is really focused on both worlds. So, looking at investing, but also looking at the inner work. So lots of things that we do in the business to support people at different stages in their journey and at different income levels and at different levels of resistance to really wanting to get support. But if you have any questions, reach out to me on Instagram. I can usually be pretty prompt in DMing someone back on there.
Excellent. Well, I will stick all those in the show notes just in case. I'll stick everywhere people can reach you in the show notes. So, and I would encourage people to reach out to you. Laura, it's been an absolute pleasure and great to speak to another Irish person for a change. Laura, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much.